What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. It has once again been far too long since I've recorded an episode. Things have just been super, super busy. But this next episode is something I'm super excited about. It's something I've wanted to experiment with the podcast and start a new series of recording episodes at shows, a part of my LUDWICK'S Garage vendor booth. Visually, I really like the way it looks, but audibly, it's a little tougher. You can't control the acoustics. It's loud. I'm hoping it kind of adds to the overall experience of listening to these episodes. They're not going to be long-winded episodes. The plan was to do 15 to 20-minute shorts with people that will be at these shows. Get like quick little sizzle reel podcast episodes, just kind of hot takes, one subject matter type things. This first episode is with the Humble Mechanic. I've wanted to get him on the podcast for a while now. Charles and I have become friends in the last couple of years. This 15-minute short became a 40-minute conversation. So bear with me through the beginning parts of this process. If you're watching on YouTube, leave in the comments what you guys think of this. If you guys like the idea, if you'd rather just hear polished audio and video studio environment podcast episodes. I'm hoping if I can harness this right, I think it'll really add to the overall experience of listening to the episode if you didn't make it to the show. And perhaps in the future, the live aspect of the podcast will be more enjoyable when you're at the show. If I had like PA, if it was a little bit more controllable for people to enjoy while at the show. But Charles and I had a lot to talk about. We tried to keep it short. I want to have him on for a full-length episode, which we might be able to do later this year, whether or not it's here in studio at my place or out in North Carolina at his, because we're talking about possibly taking on a car project together on his YouTube channel. So more on that soon. We talk a little bit about that in this episode. We want to hear from you guys on that as well, what you guys may want to see us tackle for a project. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you guys want to help support the channel and the shop in a larger way, the Patreon link is in the video's description below, as well as in the description of this podcast episode. Be sure to check out everything Charles has going on his YouTube channel, as well as his Instagram. For now, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with the Humble Mechanic.
I'm pretty loud in general, but I also don't want too much of that. I don't know that we're going to do anything about that total ambient. It's kind of cool, though, like race car noises in the background.
I hope that in post, it ends up sounding good and not completely atrocious for anyone that's listening, like on their commute to work.
I think that, so I have two opinions on this. One, like having good, proper podcast audio is important.
Yep.
But also there's something about being at a place and doing a podcast like alive at the thing that I think is really cool. So it'll be what it's going to be. You're not going to do anything about it anyway.
Exactly. So this is literally the trial run. Like you are the first guinea pig of trying to do a podcast.
So the bar is low for everyone else going afterwards.
It's not even on a stand yet. The bar's like on the ground.
Good. I feel like I can live up to those standards.
I mean, and we already talked about this. Hopefully we get a chance to do like an episode, like even if it's at your place or in Chattanooga, like in a studio, tight acoustics. But this is awesome. I'm super glad that one, you were going to be here, and two, that you were down to hang out for a few minutes.
Dude, always. This is it's a dope setup. I mean, we got some racing going on back here. So if you're hearing like some weird semi-race car noises in the background while you're listening, like it's cool sims. Are you good at that? Like, can you drive in a simulator like that?
I think I'm better at being in a real car because I've never actually been in a sim before.
I'm so bad.
Really?
Like, I'm pretty good at Mario Kart. That's where it stops
64?
Well, gosh. Don't age us out, man.
Well, I mean, that's the last video game console I played.
I was playing with my buddy and his son on Switch last night. This kid's 10. He mopped the floor with me the first round, but then I got in my groove. I'm like, I was like, all right, Thatcher, we'll just call it straight, like even, because I knew I would just destroyed him the rest of the night.
I mean, it's as a kid, I was definitely like, I don't know, a gamer, but it was like Gran Turismo 2 on PlayStation 1. Like, you found the cheats. You got the Suzuki Escudo, Pikes Peak racer, so you could win any race that you entered because it was like the biggest horsepower car in there. And there were a few different races you could race that were done in like under 10 minutes. So, because there were no like cheat codes for Gran Turismo, but there were a few races that you could win with a certain car, like that car. So you get your purse up high enough to buy the Suzuki Escudo, and then you just start racing all these little races that get your purse. And so I just filled my garage like full of cars, and then I lost that memory card. So now I don't know where. No. I still have my PlayStation and the game.
It's somewhere.
Dude, there was like 78 cars in that garage, and it was like It was the Castrol Mark IV Supra. It was the I forgot what livery was on it, but it was the Silhouette Skyline, like the red Silhouette Skyline, the yellow Pennzoil R34 Skyline. It was like all the like iconic 90s.
It's probably like a $50,000 memory card now, like if you put it up on eBay or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
What was wild about those games though, like I was good at those because you could just full throttle, crash, and then like right the car and then full throttle again and always catch up to everyone. This stuff's realistic, man. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah.
Like, no.
I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, cause I never got into. I was well out of video games when Forza came around.
Yeah,
so I haven't even played Forza. Like, literally, Gran Turismo 2 on PlayStation 1 was the last racing game that. Well, I take that back. I think it was Underground and Need for Speed.
Oh, those are super fun. I like games like that more because like
storyboard games.
Yeah, and you could crash and like the slow-mo flips of the cars or whatever that one was.
Yeah, and then you've got like Brooke Burke telling you like, oh, like we go buy the Supra, and you're like, oh, I'm like a part of this whole thing now.
I'm in it. It's real life.
Exactly. But yeah, so that's what everyone's hearing is these simulators across the way from us, which is a really cool setup. But for recording audio, I have yet to hear what this sounds like.
What I love about that though, so like, I'm not the biggest car show guy out there. Like, I don't make car shows. First of all, I don't build cars. So if I say I don't build car shows, what I mean is I don't put together cars. Like, you build that car, I bolt parts on, and that's really the extent of my building capability.
We'll chat about that because I look at it in an opposite way.
Perfect. That'll be a fun conversation. But like, I don't put together show cars. So like, I hate washing cars. Like, none of that is my thing.
Yep.
So car shows for me, they get really boring really fast. Like, I have the utmost amount of respect for like all these people that just crushed it on like this twin turbo R8 with probably like 375 wide tires on the back. Those things look huge. Total mad respect. It's just not me. So I get bored fast. And just like have something else to do.
Right.
So y'all, if you run a car show and you don't have anything to do but stand around and look at cars, you're doing car shows wrong.
Yep.
I might as well just flip on Instagram for an hour looking at cars.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yes, that's pretty cool because it's bringing an interactive component to a show. I mean, there's some like little kid in that thing right now, and that's going to be the highlight of his day.
And that's going to be the fastest time of the day, too. Some 12-year-old just stomping all the adults.
Yep. And that kid's going to grow up and be like, I want to race, I want to go to car shows, that's probably the most formative part of like what he's doing right now.
I just, so I have an 8-year-old daughter, she just turned 8, and there's a local go-kart track, indoor, reasonably fast go-karts, and you have to be 8 to go, so I just took her earlier this week.
Awesome. I saw that, I saw you post that.
Yeah, she was really nervous about it. She's never been in a go-kart before, never really done anything outside of like a Power Wheels that I put a Milwaukee M18 battery in it. Like, it was fun.
Yeah.
But also, it's 10% as fast. So
right.
We get there right when they open. I was on course by myself for my first run, and they split the kids' carts and the adult carts separate. So I went so she could watch. She's like, okay, like, I kind of get it.
Yep.
She went out with like 5 other kids. Posted the second fastest time of the day, like that morning. She's like, Dad, that was awesome. I crashed into somebody, but it was just because they were going too slow. I was like, well, girl, like, you got to have like a little bit of etiquette, but also, I get it. So I'm excited, but I'm worried she's hooked.
Yes.
And like, I just think of like the dollars that I'm just going to be shelling out. And dude, I wouldn't have it any other way.
It's like having,
so good.
I mean, and that being your hobby and your passion, I mean, it's like when I graduated high school, I got my first pro sponsorship in BMX, and immediately that's what I invested in.
Yep.
And I grew up in a garage with my dad, so I could tell that like he was psyched that I was like achieving some like, I don't know, goals or whatever. But like once that came to an end and I dove back into the garage, like I could tell my dad was like super stoked because all I wanted to do was be in the garage and like, like learn welding and like more like, and now, so I can totally relate from an opposite, like almost like your daughter's point of view, where it's like she could get into hockey and you're like, oh boy, because that's just as expensive.
Oh God,
hockey gear,
and I got to get up early in the morning. I ain't trying to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So to get hooked on something that you're already like, you already got all the tools of the trade.
And that's exactly it. And it's easy to like want to push your kid into something like that.
Right,
and like if she hated it, all right, that's cool. That's not your thing, but You know,
how cool though to be like,
I know.
it's, you know, being a girl and she's like, oh, I'm hooked about this. That's awesome.
And she's small. And, like, you know, being short, you know, you and I are similar heights. So, like, you get made fun of all the time. Oh, can you reach that? And she's like, you know, the kids are teasing her about being small. Like, Josephine, let me tell you something, dude. First of all, being small is mega advantage throughout your life. So, watch someone that's 6'4" get on an airplane.
Oh, yeah,
and then you're just like, oh, yeah, I got all this room. But in go-karting, being small is all advantage. Like,
you're
once
like
your
a
arms
jockey.
are strong enough to really work the wheel, like, somebody's going to weigh 20 pounds more than you, and you're going to be faster.
I mean, even when it comes down to racing in a car, you know? I mean, that's why jockeys on horses are so short and small.
They're basically the size of 12-year-olds.
Exactly.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier when I said that I don't consider what I do as building cars.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I was just out in California, and I bagged a Mercedes wagon for a buddy of mine who's got a shop out there. Notably vintage Mercedes, vintage BMW. They do new stuff, but they've got Pagodas in there and like R107 Mercedes and some Volkswagens, but mostly BMWs and Mercedes. And they'll have like a 6.3 Mercedes motor in pieces, and they're like, and I'm like, it's braille to me, right? I'm like, I don't even understand what I'm looking at. But we have these. The reason why I'm bringing this up is we just had this conversation a couple weeks ago where he's like, yeah, but the stuff that you've like learned from your dad. Like that auto union I'm building, that pre-Audi, it's like I've got to build a tube chassis inside that body to like mate it to the frame and it's hard. I'm not naturally good at it. I spend hours staring at the wall or staring at that body being like, all right, how am I gonna but for me, what you guys are doing is like Sutton always says, my buddy out in California always says, it's just nuts and bolts, man.
Yep.
And I'm like, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not trying to convince you otherwise, but it's the I don't know how to like best lay it out. It's the time invested in knowing what nuts and bolts go where and the understanding of like, because I can take things apart, but I'm that guy that has to have a piece of cardboard and everything's getting pressed into the cardboard.
Oh, first of all, don't feel bad about that because I still do that. Like, anytime I pull a transmission on a car that I've had, I mean, geez, the number of Mark IV transmissions I've had out of cars is well in the hundreds, right? But I grab a piece of cardboard and I poke all of them through. And the reason I do that is so that I don't get dumb and end up dropping a bolt into a water jacket, costing myself a ton of money. So I think the way I see it is they're both skill sets, right? Like my skill set of rebuilding an engine versus your skill set of fabricating a thing. To me, the way I see it is, and I'm not belittling either skill set. They're both both good skill sets and hard and like take time and effort and dedication to really master or even get to a proficient level, right? But the way I see it is I'm taking something that exists, taking it apart and putting it back together as it existed beforehand. Or maybe like, you know, maybe we're going to throw some forged rods in it or something like that. Whereas in a fabrication setting, you're taking something that either doesn't exist and creating it, or taking something that exists and, you know, making it into a thing that previously didn't exist. And first of all, it's probably kind of a dumb argument to say, like, I didn't build this or I built this when, like, the whole built not bought thing. Did you build the car? Or did you buy all the parts and put them on? And, like, it's a silly argument because what's the difference anyway?
That word gets thrown around.
But, like, and that's why I don't try and get caught up in the built not bought thing. It's like, look, if you're into your car, whatever the thing is, right?
Exactly.
And you have a passion for it, I don't care. I'm not going to judge you if you work hard all day at a computer job and pay someone like me to put your car together.
Exactly.
Because you probably love that car more than I love my favorite car. So how is what right do I have to belittle you because you didn't put a wrench on that car? Who the hell cares?
Exactly.
Like, what's the last race car driver you saw wrench on their own race car? Like in the pro level? None, probably?
Exactly.
Does that make them any less of a expert at what they do,
or enthusiast?
Or
you know?
enthusiast?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's aside from the towing business, as we talked about earlier. Like, my dad owned an automotive garage with a towing business, and the fact that people, I mean, he did run-of-the-mill stuff, you know, like routine maintenance and stuff, but he did a lot of custom stuff, custom exhaust work, and like lots of like not like chassis builds, but lots of outside the realm of like routine maintenance, and that put food on our table. That kept the lights on. That put us through school, my sister and I. So I've got like a personal, I don't know, like a personal finger on that pulse of, if it wasn't for people like the person you just described, people like my family wouldn't have made a living, nor someone like you.
100%.
So like, it needs to be there. Like, I work on my own stuff because I just, obviously growing up in a garage household, I never like saved money to have some guy that I hoped wasn't taking advantage of me to work on my car.
That was never an option.
So like, are you sure it's just the fuse, or sure it's just not the fuse?
Right.
Like, why do we have to do a whole fuel system or whatever?
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that sentiment. Where like, half of these people here, if they like have some sort of tuner shop, like they need people who work that computer job all day long, who love their car no less than we love our car.
Exactly.
That like will pay somebody to work on it.
Now, I do think if you're in any kind of capacity to like learn how to do it and do some of it yourself, I think the reward for that is far bigger than like cut the check, here you go, shop XYZ, thank you for installing my thing. I think participating in the nuts and bolts build of your car, whatever that means to you, is awesome. And if you, even if it's something little like putting an intake on your car, dude, I remember the first intake I had for a car, I paid somebody to put it on because you know what? I didn't know how the hell to do it.
Exactly.
Now I can't imagine paying someone to do that, but because I know how.
Yeah.
And the reward for doing that for most people is amazing. And I wish they would consider trying, especially today where, whatever car it is, whatever part it is, how do I install XYZ, and you're going to get like a really dope Chris Fix video on how to do it that
or one of your videos,
I mean, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Anything, or somebody, even if it's one of the videos I kind of, we just did this Mustang project, and I'm not a Mustang guy. This is the first Mustang I've ever owned. It's probably the third Mustang I've ever driven. Yeah. I don't get it.
First of all, it's an SN95 Mustang.
It's a 2000 GT, which apparently is...
Oh, wait. Yeah, I think
it's a new Edge, so I think that's like the next one. Look at me,
right.
I'm a Mustang expert now. Yeah. I'm not. Like, I don't get the car. I don't like anything about it. Scratch that. It sounds kind of cool, and it's really cool that you just dump the clutch and blow a bunch of smoke.
Yes.
But there's a whole lot of other cars that can do that too.
Exactly.
That personally, I would rather have. The seat's awful. The shifter's awkward. The steering wheel's at a weird angle. It's not fast.
Right.
It handled terrible when I first got it.
Is that an IRS car, or is that still a straight axle?
No, it's a solid axle rear end.
Yeah.
So because I don't know this car very well, the first thing I did whenever like we were kind of plotting out our strategy for the build was go to YouTube and look up how do I install rear control arms, right? I could figure it out, but let's get a little bit of knowledge behind. And engine mounts, like how do you install engine mounts? Okay, no big deal, right? And I found the ways guys were doing these engine mounts were just the hardest way possible, it seemed, after actually doing it. But even there's a point to this, trust me, roll with me. Even the ones that are like kind of shaky cam, GoPro video, where they're kind of doing this thing, it shows you how to do it. And it might not be a great video. The audio could be bad, but it's going to give you an insight that you wouldn't otherwise get. And you'll probably find one little tidbit of information that's like, oh, that's how I get to that bolt, or that's the right tool that I need. And there's really no excuse if you want to do anything DIY right now, whether it's learn how to weld or fabricate or rebuild an engine or whatever, all of it's out there.
It's insane. It really is. I mean, and I think people's reactions to that, like you said, like the first intake that you put on yourself, I think their reactions to that are what differ where that whole built not bought thing comes from. Because like someone might finally do something for the first, they've installed coilovers in their car for the first time ever, right? And they've saved $1,200 or whatever someone would charge them to put coilovers in, and now they're like, built not bought, you know. And I think that reaction is where that comes from, because other people like us might be like, you just like absorb yourself in that gratification of like doing it yourself, but understand that it's like you're not really building the car. And that's where I think that word got lost. I think people like if someone's like, yeah, I built that car, and it's literally on coilovers and wheels, I don't care. Like, they just use the word. Like, who cares? I'm not gonna.
The flip side of this, how else do you describe it, right? It's the whole like staged mods argument. I use that terminology because in the VW world, especially, somebody's like, stop saying stage. Like, stage 0 is how the car came from the factory, right?
Yeah.
Stage 1 in my world is software. You've tuned the ECM, you've tuned the TCM, maybe if it has that. Stage 2 becomes, now we're bolting parts on the car, but the software's also different. So it makes sense. Now, other manufacturers, that may not be a thing, but like, what other easy way do you describe it? Do I want to spend 5 minutes listening to you put the same exhaust that 100,000 other people did, the same intake? Like, that to me is all part of it. So ultimately, man, look, we're all kind of in this world together. There's cars that people build that I think are dumb. There's cars that people build that aren't my thing, and that's kind of where we are, like, here today at Import Alliance. Like, a lot of these cars aren't my thing, but I'll tell you, there are cars here that will always and forever be classically cool.
Yeah.
An old school NSX, I don't care if it's 3037. That car will still look awesome. And older MR2s, hell yeah. Like,
I agree.
Skylines and S15s and, like, that stuff, it's awesome. I don't necessarily want one. I probably won't own one, but that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate, like, this Supra right here, or BMW. I can't tell because we're looking at the side profile. Like, it's a cool car. And RX-7's always going to be cool. Even the old, like, really boxy square ones or Supras or whatever. And, like, let's appreciate that even if you're into JDM cars and I like European cars or Mustangs or muscle cars or whatever, it's all the same.
Yeah. I mean, I've almost been, like, fluid or liquid in a way where I shape to the glass I'm in, because I've had Japanese cars, Euro stuff. I mean, my Corvair, that's American. You know, it's like it's weird. It's an aesthetic thing for me. Never really been brand loyal. I started with Volkswagens though. Like, that's where I started, because my father was a GM muscle car guy, like late '60s muscle car guy, but raced the Mark I Rabbit, like on the ice. You know, I'm from New Hampshire, so he was the sitting chairman of the ice racing committee in New Hampshire.
That's awesome.
So he built a Mark I. It was an early round headlight car. It was like a 77 or 78 car, and ultimately, like, built it up a little bit to the point where he had, like, an old school, like, new speed throttle body. He had, like, a tri-Y header on it.
Nice.
And, like, you know, these are like the old terms. But as I got my license, you know, after he got out of that and I became a teenager, like, Rabbits were cool because I saw my dad, like, flying the checkered flag every Sunday was one of those things.
Right.
And it was affordable. I bought my first Rabbit for $500. So
That's awesome.
I got immersed, but like an RS Camaro, like a 68 Camaro, was not affordable as a 16-year-old. So I got started in Volkswagen. So that's where, like, watching a lot of your stuff, you know, we've kind of, like, become friends in the last couple of years now. Last year, I'd say. Yeah. I've watched a lot more of your stuff recently, and I'm like, oh, like, that's where it's like, it's a realm that's, like, so far outside my expertise, where that's where my outlook starts. Where I'm like, I'm still learning everything that I do. I'm still learning. Like, there's plenty of things where I'll, like, if it's some new weld style or I've got some weird joint, I'll watch a couple of YouTube videos to be like, all right, how would somebody weld this? Or call my dad. Like, how would you weld this?
Hey, Dad, check this out.
Exactly. But likewise with stuff like what you're doing, because I feel like that's more applicable to, like, daily life.
Yeah.
Because, like, that 924S Porsche I just bought, it needs a clutch, I think. And I'm going to be like, I'm stressing doing a clutch in that car, even though it's nuts and bolts, and tons of people have done one. I'm stressing that far more than if I were to, like, well, I'm going to bag the car too, so I have to build, and there's no built-in kits. I'm, like, way more eager to do that than to do a clutch. Because I might get things apart and be like, I don't know what to do.
From?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the beauty about filming it, at least. Like, you kind of have record of where it came from. And I also think, like, when you sit and watch someone rebuild an engine, for example, or whatever it is, right, do a clutch in a video, you're seeing the produced version of it. You're not seeing the version, like, I try to leave enough of that kind of stuff in for people to understand that, like, even though, I mean, I'm in year 20 of professionally fixing Volkswagen, I've been around a minute, but even with that, I don't remember how everything went together.
Right.
I mess stuff up. Yeah. I lose bolts, and so I try to leave enough of that in there where
to make it feel real.
If someone watches it, because I know what it's like to DIY stuff, like, what I think oftentimes, especially people in the industry, forget, it's like, yeah, I fix cars for a living, but there's other stuff that I do that I don't do myself. Like, I pay a dude to come once a year and, like, do maintenance on the house air conditioner because I don't want to do it, one. Two, in an hour, he's done. I'd be screwing with it for half a day.
And time is money.
So while he's out there doing his thing, and the guy's really awesome too, but, like, while he's doing his thing, I'm working, making money. He's working, making money. I know if, like, I have a problem, I'm going to call up this dude and be like, hey, man, come help me out and hook this thing up.
Right.
And he would do it.
And it'll be done right.
And it'll be done right, and I don't have to sweat it. But there's so much out there that's produced where they eliminate any mistake that could possibly happen. And I think it's important to leave that in because of the relatability to the DIYer that's struggling and frustrated and pissed. And it's like, man, this stuff happens to pros too.
Yep.
I break stuff. The last thing like bad that I broke, I was taking the diff apart in one of my R32s, and there was a snap ring that I don't even know if I knew it was there. I didn't see it, so I'm out on the press trying to press this bearing race out or something along those lines.
Yep.
Like press. Huh. Well, maybe it's really in there. You know, the 20-year-old car. Yeah, I'll just keep crank.
Oh, man.
The whole thing explodes. The case piece breaks in half.
Of course, yeah.
And of course, you can't get it anymore. And if you could, it would be like $700 anyway. Yep. So I left it in the video because I screwed up.
Yep.
And it was important to me that people see even professionals screw up.
Yep.
And if they play like they don't, they're either lying or they're just not working on enough stuff.
Exactly.
Right? You're going to screw up.
Yep.
You're going to leave a bolt loose. You're going to round something off. I broke 2 studs on a ball joint the other day because I wasn't patient with the impact gun in the heat. I'm just like, send it, punch.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I guess I'm putting a ball joint in it now.
Yeah.
I guess I'm doing the other side now.
I mean, it's good that you like realize that, because it's easy for someone like you that what you do in your videos would be easy to just polish everything.
100%.
You know, and I would almost expect that from the I say the level as far as like for how long you've been doing it, but also like how in depth. Like one of the last ones I watched was an older video. I can't remember, it was a few months, but like you were taking apart like a transmission, and there was just like relays and solenoids and stuff, and I'm like, my palms are getting sweaty just watching, and I would expect that if I'm watching someone like you do that obviously it's just like routine and that everything's so I do that too, and a lot of times I've got to like go back. I'll keep a clip when I'm recording, and then when I'm in post, I'm like, no, I'll leave that, because one, it might be funny, but two, it's like if I'm like sometimes I won't even film an episode because I know going into it I'll be like, I'm gonna fumble this whole thing, and it's gonna take a week to film. So it's I'm glad you do that, because it's good for kids who are ambitious about it to not be defeated. You know,
exactly. And that's kind of what I try to think of. It's like there's some 17-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid, 15, whatever, right, trying to fall in love with their car just like anybody that's a car enthusiast had at some point, right? The first car I ever had that I did any kind of modifications to was a Jeep, and the mods that I did to it was I put speakers in it, and this is like up behind the dash, so you know, imagine like you're shoving your hand way up there. It's perfect for my introduction to the German car world. Took a couple brackets off, cleaned them up, and painted them. That was my first modification, and like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We all started somewhere, and I think a lot of times when we get older, it's easy to forget that, like, we're all in different points of our whatever journey, and, like, don't trash on this kid because he's excited that he took the brackets off his Jeep and painted them. Be happy that the kid took some initiative and did something that makes him happy. Now, there's some stuff that people do that's dumb, and it's
true.
I don't get it.
I mean,
but
taste cannot be bought. But you're talking about that kid getting into it, and if all he's watching are videos of like everything going right and everything he's doing in his driveway is going wrong,
he's done.
That could be the end factor, you know, where like he doesn't realize that all these other people are also in trial and error and stuff. So I think that's a good it's a good teaching aspect too, to be like, this is how I messed this up. This is how you can avoid doing that.
Some of the best lessons I've learned in fixing cars. I mean, I've screwed a lot of stuff up myself, so those are hard, painful lessons that you don't forget. Like, as I'm saying that, I'm remembering 7 or 8 different things that I screwed up that were real bad. But it was also watching the guys around me make mistakes too, and those are far less painful for you to learn from. So
be a sponge.
When I first started at the dealer, the guy next to me was doing spark plugs on I don't remember, a 2-liter Jetta or something, very routine job, nothing hard about it. And a couple hours later, the car gets towed in with a spark plug still attached to the wire, but bouncing around in the spark plug well, because he didn't torque it, so it popped the spark plug, ripped the threads out. I was a tech for 3 months. Since that day, every single spark plug I've ever installed has been properly torqued. Because I don't ever want to have to fix a cylinder head because I didn't go buzz or click or whatever. And his mistake worked out real good for me. It sucked for him. Hopefully he kind of took the same lesson. But it's so easy to make mistakes, and it's so easy to try and pretend that you never did or that you're
to make
perfect.
it look like you're
this elite tech. And like, I'm a decent tech, but man, I screw stuff up, and it's fine. And as long as like I can unwind it, I don't generally worry too much about it. My big takeaway is like, all right, dummy, don't do that again.
Right, exactly.
That was expensive. Or like, I have a car in the shop now that I was filming a shifter rebuild on. So the seats are all the way back, the center console's out, the shifter's, here in the where a shifter is in a car in most places. Camera's here, and I think I like leaned on the cord for the camera, and it just went scratched up the radio. And I say scratched up, there was like a scratch about that big in the radio. And I was just like, how much is this going to cost me? And like, it happens. It had purely an accident. Obviously I didn't do it on purpose. Painful, but man, that stuff happens.
My dad always said education's expensive no matter where you go to school. That day you were in school,
I got it got real quiet on this stuff. I think
real quiet.
That was weird. It's like when you say something weird to like your buddy in class, and then the whole room gets quiet. That's mega weird.
Figures the majority of us talking was with the most amount of noise in here.
That's all right.
Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. This was awesome. So what kind of takeaway do we take away from this conversation? Built not bought doesn't matter.
Built not bought doesn't matter. Be organic and be true. If you're filming videos, or even if it's Instagram, social media, if you're messing up, like, make light of it in maybe a lighthearted way, because nobody's perfect.
Yes.
Pay attention to other people's mistakes.
Yep.
So you can learn from them yourself.
Yep.
So you don't end up having to spend a lot of money or suffer personal injury.
Yes.
Like running a lathe. Like, I used to leave the key in the chuck, and a good friend of my family's who ran like a machine shop, I'd be up there like turning something for a part, and if I loosened the jaws to take something out of the chuck and left the key there for a second, he'd almost like smack. Like, he goes, that'll kill you.
Yeah.
Like, you turn that lathe on with that key in there, and nothing starts to spin.
Yeets right into your face.
So I mean, like, stuff like that as example. Like, pay attention, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the main thing.
Slow down a little bit. Remember safety.
I need to learn.
I'm saying that. I'm right there with you. I would say the other thing too, and this is easy to forget, is, man, we all start somewhere.
Yep.
We're all at different points on our thing. Cool, you're a professional tech that has $100,000 worth of Snap-on tools. There's a kid out there with a $50 Husky toolbox that's trying hard.
I've got a Husky box, and I'm a little bit above the $50.
$75 Husky toolbox. Like John.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there. I worked out of my dad's shop my whole life whenever I was tinkering on stuff, and now that I moved to Chattanooga, like, I'm building my own shop out. Like, I spent $5,000 on a bend pack lift, and I'm like, what am I? And I don't work on other people's cars. I work on this stuff that I'll sell when I finish. But like, it's like I'm there. Like, I'm in that growing pain of I buy it. I have to buy everything. If I want to, if I need a tool for something, I go buy it, and that tool may not be making me money right away. So yeah, it's and that's what I like talking to kids here about. When somebody's like looking at that car, or whatever, like, oh, like, I want to do that, but I don't know how. And
I could never do that. Like, no, you could.
You totally, because I don't know how to do that either. But I think that's a good takeaway. I think we hit a few really good, and that wasn't the point either. But I think that became a really.
I don't know what the point started off, but
I thought we were going to talk about how much you hated Mustangs.
Oh,
but this became a really
how much
good,
time do we have?
Exactly.
I trashed on Mustangs a little bit, so I feel like I got that in there.
I thought that was a really cool like project that you guys were starting.
That was talk about taking someone out of their box and putting them in another one, but. I learned that modifying Mustangs are actually pretty cheap.
Yep.
And for not a lot of money, you can actually make a New Edge Mustang handle pretty decent.
Yeah, that's
may not
awesome.
handle decent long term, but I mean, I was able to autocross that thing pretty decent.
Awesome.
I'm not a great driver, so
I
did set a time about 4 seconds faster in a Mark 8 GTI than that Mustang.
Makes sense.
Later on in the day, but there was a bit of a rage drive on that one. So.
Yep. Well, it's just Humble Mechanic on Instagram, right? Not Humble.
I feel like if you put the in there, you probably get there too. But what's weird, I didn't think about this at the time, but when you put the in front of humble, it almost feels like it knocks that word completely out of the equation. Like,
Yeah.
If you call yourself the anything, like
That makes sense. I agree.
but that name kind of didn't even come from like the idea of being humble, which is it doesn't mean what a lot of people think it means. It means that like you don't brag about what you do.
Right.
I had this mentor, and I was so fortunate in my career to have some really great mentors coming up as a technician. And he's like, Charles, man, you're a smart dude. You're going to be a really good tech one day. But let me tell you, about that time, you're feeling real good about yourself, and you fixed a bunch of cars, hard stuff that nobody else fixed. It's like, you're going to get a car, and it's going to come in and serve you just like the biggest slice of humble pie you could ever imagine.
It's going to take your lunch money.
And I was like, all right, old man, cool. Like, I appreciate the kind words, but whatever. Dude, 2 weeks later, I got
Served.
mopped for like 3 weeks on a Torag.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in the worst of the worst, getting my butt kicked, not making any money, feeling bad about myself, mad, might as well be slinging tools across the shop.
Yep.
And I just look over at him, he just looks at me and smiles. I'm like,
Yep.
you son of a...
Experiencing it.
Yeah, he was right. He was right. So
it's Humble Mechanic on Instagram.
Yep.
And YouTube, right?
And YouTube.
Yep.
And probably wherever else. I don't know.
Wherever else.
I'm exploring always new things. So
yeah, likewise.
If there's new things, let us know.
Well, I mean, new YouTube. That's my new thing.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the last of the party. And you talk about patience. There's a whole nother rabbit hole we won't go down. But I'm suffering from that now because at 38, only being a few years into YouTube with not viral content either. Yeah. Like it's episodic. It's like today I'm doing this on this car. On weird stuff too, not Skylines and Supras. I am the most impatient. I'm like, let's go. I'm trying to do 1 to 2 videos a week, and it's like, so I'm trying to slow myself down too and focus on the art of it. And yeah, it's tough.
It's a very different ecosystem than when I started, because when I first started, you could kind of just put a video up, and somebody would watch it.
Yeah.
Right? And now
algorithms are different.
It's all different, and like there's so much out there, and it's all, well, not all of it, but there's a lot of really great content out there that's gonna, even if you're really good at what you do, it's gonna be better produced, it's gonna be better lit, it's gonna have better audio. So it takes time, man. It takes so much time, especially now. And it's hard. It's hard to understand that this is a long-term play.
Yep. I knew that getting into it. I wasn't expecting something to happen overnight, but I think this is my 4th year into it with episodic stuff, and it's like, you find that impatience. You're like, all right, if this is going to go anywhere, it needs to happen now because this takes a lot of time, and I'm not 22, So I'm learning to just focus on the work and just put a product out, and that's why I've tried to invest in everything right. You know what I mean? Like, these SM7Bs are $500 a piece. It's like it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's trying to do things right, basically, and not worry about going viral.
And that'll come, and now's a weird time too with like TikTok and that, where what I see happen to people is actually worse than what you're dealing with, is that they start to put out a little bit of content, they have a couple videos pop. Now all of a sudden they think that, and I'm not trying to take away anything from anyone, they think like, okay, all my stuff is going to pop now and go viral, whatever that means to them. And then they kind of are quickly getting to the realization of that's not how everything goes. And I was fortunate when I started that nobody watched any of my stuff early on, or 100 people would, and I thought that was awesome as hell that 100 people would watch something. So I never had that really hot viral thing pop right away in the early days. So I worked and I grinded for 700 views in a month. Total across the whole channel. Right.
And it's growing pains. And painful it is, but and maybe we're both on crazy schedules. Maybe we end up doing something.
I don't know.
This year. That'd be awesome.
So when this goes out, where does this podcast exist?
On the YouTube channel.
On the YouTube channel.
Spotify, iTunes.
So since you can't do it on Spotify or iTunes, I would suggest that on the YouTube space, what are some cool projects that we could do together that you guys would enjoy watching? And apparently watching the struggle of neither one of us knowing what the hell we're doing.
Nothing. Because you proposed something on air suspension. That'd be, whatever it is, I'm stoked, because I need to step out more and be like, all right, I need to do more with more people. And the fact that it was almost basically your idea to do something, I'm super excited.
I love it. And somebody put it so good to me at some point. They're like, man, all you do is just try stuff till something cool happens. I'm like, yeah, that's actually exactly what I do. So I'm all for trying cool stuff, and hopefully it happens.
That's a good call to action in the comments.
Yeah.
Like, what would people like seeing from you and me on like a project?
Air ride car hauler. That's cool.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Kind of out of the box for both of us.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never owned a car on air ride, so.
Oh, that's good to know.
So
Because that'd be a good play on like your whole aspect. Like, this is my first car on air.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta. Yeah, I'm eager to hear.
Yeah. All right. What's the car, and what do we do? Let us know. And I think that's a good sign up.
Charles, thank you so much, man. Thank you guys for listening.
Bye bye.
Humble Mechanic. Goodbye. Import Alliance.
# sponsored.